Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, people of planet Earth. I just climbed the Pinnacles, which is a mountain range on the Coromandel Peninsula of New Zealand's very beautiful North Island, and camped in the remarkable place of the Coromandel Forest Park. And this video is going to share with you some hints and tips as to how to get the best experience possible for attempting this hike. Or it's alternatively simply going to reveal to you a little pocket of the world that's extremely beautiful and will one day inspire you to come and visit for yourself. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the following video. Thank you. Where are the Pinnacles? And in fact, wherein is the Coromandel Peninsula? And in fact, some of you watching this may even be wondering to yourselves, where on earth is New Zealand? It is a small, isolated country in the South Pacific, but if you scroll out on Google Earth, you'll see where it sits in relation to the continent of Australia. So Auckland is almost directly in line with Sydney, and then to the south is Antarctica, and over to the east is Patagonia for South America. So zooming down into New Zealand, two islands, north and south. If you scroll on down in towards Auckland region, you will notice, first of all, where I live is the little blue dot. But over to the east of that, you'll find a little piece of land sticking out in the form of a peninsula. That is the Coromandel Peninsula. And if you scroll a little further in, you'll see Coromandel Forest Park and a little town called Thames, the Coronga Valley, and then you follow the gravel road north into the heart of the Coromandel Forest Park. You'll start to pass a number of Department of Conservation campsites. There are quite a few of them. I actually stayed at this one down here, and I'll circle back to that later in the video as to why that is a recommended place to stay. But effectively, if you're doing the journey, you'll follow a gravel road, takes you deep into the heart of the valley, and eventually you'll come to a car park. And this is the car park here. It doesn't look terribly large from Google Maps, but in actual fact it's been expanded since this was taken. And then from the Valley Road end car park, you simply begin the walk, which is a 12-kilometer hike there and back. And that takes you all the way through this wonderful landscape up to the Pinnacles hut, where you can actually stay the night if you wish. And then summit the Pinnacles themselves. And if I just click on this little chap, it should bring up, yes, there's a lovely picture of the top of the Pinnacles. Very beautiful area. And then on the hut itself as well, you'll get an idea as to what it's like visually, as to what the hut looks like. And you can stay there for the night, to be organized through the Department of Conservation website. So that is the location. So now that the location has been identified, so the next question is, what is the hike actually like? So I use a system called AllTrails. You may have heard of it. I use it all over the world for all my treks and hikes. Very handy system, although full disclosure, sometimes it can be slightly inaccurate as far as distances and elevations goes. For example, on this particular one, it is recorded the Pinnacles hike to be 14.3 kilometers long. And I believe what's happened here is that whoever did the hike and reported the data did 14 kilometers, possibly for the reason that there wasn't enough space in the car park and they had to start it further back. But whenever I did the walk, I clocked it at a nice even 12 kilometers. But nonetheless, say 12 to 14 kilometers if you want to be safe. It's a very beautiful hike. It is a one-way, it's not a loop, as you can see. Which can be a little bit demoralizing, because once you get to the summit, you have to start your return journey back along the exact same track. And there are a couple of occasions where the track gets a little bit narrow and two-way pedestrian traffic can be a bit of a challenge. But nevertheless, this is the area. And if I switch it to 3D, you'll get an idea as to the terrain. So you'll see off into the far distance there the surrounding towns and coastline. Absolutely gorgeous part of the world. But down here is where the car park beginning of the hike is. And then you follow that along. You'll go pretty much along a creek for the first maybe couple of Ks of the track. Then you'll start to ascend up what's called the rocky staircase, where things can get a little bit challenging. And then you'll continue on that up until things start to level out here, pretty much where it says the Pinnacles track. And it gets a little bit flat at this point. You're a little bit exposed to the elements, but that is before one would reach, in circle number 1 there, the Pinnacles hut. And this is where some folks may decide that they want to actually camp for the night, and some people would do that in order to begin the track the following morning and summit for the sunrise, because from the car park to the hut, yes, it's a little bit long and it's a little bit challenging. There's a bit of a climb. It's not actually the most difficult part of the hike. The most difficult part of the hike is from the hut to the summit, which you can sort of tell by the 3D relief here. It goes from what is pretty much variably flat to quite a steep incline, and you're pretty much climbing over what looks like the top of a dragon's spine. There are some staircases, there's some areas where you need to use all fours, arms and legs, to get past, but very exciting, very enjoyable, and very beautiful. And so that is the hike itself. You can see along the hike, you cross a number of rivers over some suspended bridges over the canopy of the trees. You find yourself amongst the flora and fauna, particularly some beautiful native bird life. And then back at the visitor center for the Department of Conservation, there's a little display as to what sort of flora and fauna you can expect on this hike. They got some pretty cool taxidermied examples of the wildlife, and indeed some fossilized examples of some prehistoric wildlife as well. So yeah, it's quite a cool little spot, but I'll let you be the judge of that. So now that the location and the hike itself have been discussed, let's talk about what it is you need to take with you. So of course this depends on whether or not you decide to camp there for the evening, or if you're simply going to do the hike and then head on home or head on to your next destination. But for the hike itself, just the bare essentials. There's no point in this climb where you require ropes or carabiners or ice picks or anything like that. So just a decent set of hiking boots, some waterproofs depending on the time of year you're going, and of course sun cream, because the sun in New Zealand is extremely strong, as well as like a day sack to take your fluids and food in. So pretty much what you'd expect for your basic level hikes. Obviously for the camp it depends on what you define as comfortable. For myself, I took a little one-man tent, a little fold away portable barbecue, a knife, as well as some swimming shorts and a towel, because there was a river in the campsite, which was a welcome dip after a long hike. And then of course your sleeping bag and your toiletries, but again that's really down to you to decide what is comfortable. But from Auckland it's around a 1.5 hour drive, and eventually you'll reach the Department of Conservation visitor center, and these are the examples of the taxidermied wildlife that you could expect in the area. Lovely big example of an albatross there, and over here there is a fossilized skeleton of a moa bird. Now I said prehistoric earlier on. It's not prehistoric, however it isn't extinct, unfortunately. It was hunted to extinction a couple hundred years ago. Giant two-legged flightless bird that used to roam New Zealand. It's very exciting, very cool. So after you leave the visitor centre for the Department of Conservation, you'll head along a gravel road north to the end of the Coromandel Valley Road, and you'll pass beautiful mountains and hills, lots of great scenery, until eventually you come to the car park before the hike begins. And, well, once you get to the car park, you just get stuck into it, really. There's nowhere at the car park in the form of facilities. You can't really buy food or beverages there. There is a toilet block. Apart from that, that's it, really. There's no payment for the car parking, which is good. However, anything that you need to square off regarding your campsite should be done back at the visitor centre with the Department of Conservation, especially if you're staying at one of their sites or if you're staying at the hut, because all the bookings are organized through their website, and they'll provide you with a little slip which will permit you into the sites. But anyway, the first leg of the hike is quite modest, relatively flat, with a slight incline, lots of beautiful flora and fauna, great vegetation, and of course these great suspension bridges which take you over rivers, get you up into the canopy of some of the trees and allows you to take in some great views and really just immerse yourself in nature. And there are a series of these suspension bridges along the track, and then there's a couple more that are only really required in the event of flood season. That is worth mentioning. I got doing this hike on what is a very beautiful day. However, it's not always the case, and a part of the hike is exposed to a live landslide area as well. So in times of heavy rain, that's another reason why it's best to touch base with the Department of Conservation, because they'll simply tell you that it's either worth doing or not worth doing at your own peril. So, but use your own judgment on that kind of thing. And from this point, the track starts to take the form of some staircases. This is still relatively modest as far as your elevation goes. I think where it really starts to get tricky is whenever you get greeted with a part of the path called the Rocky Staircase, which is effectively just a huge series of staircases, but they're shaped out of natural rock. They can be quite slippy, to be honest, so coming down them, take a bit of caution. And in some cases, the heights between climbing the rocks can be quite great. So you may find yourself employing the use of your hands as well as legs at this point. But yeah, another example of the great scenery on this track. Everywhere you go, you're just surrounded by great towering peaks and hills. They're quite small. I was going to say short, but the peaks here are actually quite small when you consider New Zealand's scenery. Most of their Southern Alps, their base height is around 1,400 meters, whereas I think the highest peak here at the Pinnacles was 800 meters. So quite small, but that doesn't take away from the gravity of how beautiful they are. And here's another suspension bridge. As you can see, you're right over the canopy of the trees. And at this point, just the bird life, the bird song is absolutely incredible. And I believe it's actually after this point, across this bridge, where you begin the climb of the Rocky Staircase. And there it is. I'm afraid you'll have to forgive me because I don't have a lot of footage on the Rocky Staircase, as I was too out of breath. But here's a lovely little pool halfway up the staircase where you can stop off for a drink and dip your feet if you wish. But then the track continues, and this footage is more so towards the top of the Rocky Staircase. You can get an idea as to why it's called the Rocky Staircase based on the path. But here is actually where it starts to level out, and interesting enough, there's some signs around the heritage and history of the place. This used to be a cattle droving track, so whereas I was losing my breath simply walking on 2 feet, the early European settlers here actually used to drove cattle along this track over the valleys, which I found was absolutely amazing. They pushed carriages and carts and all sorts of things as well. So I can't imagine doing that if I was struggling so much just with a couple of 2-litre bottles of water. But at this point it starts to really level out. This is where you are in that sort of sweet spot between the top of the Rocky Staircase and you're leveling off towards the Pinnacles hut, which of course after that is where you summit the Pinnacles themselves. So at this point just sort of enjoy the flat ground while you can. But again, lots of great flora and fauna, beautiful colours of the New Zealand forestry as well. It's just absolutely littered with all sorts of shades of green, especially when the sun breaks through them. This is the part now where the overhead bush starts to thin out and you start to get more exposed to the sun. I did find myself having to stop here a few times and put on some layers of sun cream. As mentioned before, the sun is extremely strong in New Zealand with UV. Yeah, here you can see plenty of trip hazards. My hiking boots have actually got steel toes on them, so for me, I'm quite happy just to charge through terrain like that, but it depends on what you're wearing, of course, if you're wearing boots or trainers, but I would suggest boots personally. And then after this part, you pass the hut and you start the ascent. And the higher it is you go, you start to see these views. So very panoramic views all around, every direction. Extremely beautiful, extremely distant. As I said, the gradient does start to get quite steep. There's lots of staircases, lots of ladders to be climbing. In some cases, the ladders are very steep and require hands and legs. I don't get much footage from actually climbing the ladders. However, this photograph will highlight what they look like. This chap is obviously a bit in front of me, but you can just about see some of the ladder runs that are sticking out of the rock to his left. That's an example as to some of the rock ladders you'll be expected to climb to reach the top. But once you get to the summit, look at this view. Absolutely beautiful panoramic scenes across the Coromandel Peninsula. You can actually almost see both coasts, west and east. But from there on, it's back down to the campsite. And this is it. The campsite I stayed at, Dock Campsite, Department of Conservation. It was right beside this wonderful little river. And that really came as a welcome gift, so to speak, whenever I came back down to soak the feet in really cool, refreshing mountain water. Deep enough so that you can actually submerge yourself and swim about. And I did take my underwater camera and got some footage of some of the local fish life. Not huge sort of jawbreakers, but still pretty cool nonetheless. And I sort of just parked up and chilled here in the water for, an hour or two until it was time to sort of settle in for the evening. Now, I took with me a fold-away portable barbecue, and this is it here. And because it's sort of open flame, a few people may express concerns around using that at a Department of Conservation campsite because of fire risks and permits. However, whilst I was at the visitor center of the department, I did show them it and asked them if this was okay, and they were perfectly accepting of it. And you look around you, everyone else is using the likes of gas barbecues and things. This is charcoal, but as I say, they were more than happy for that to be accommodated. You just have to be sensible and, respect fire and respect your surroundings and neighbors. So yeah, truly fantastic experience completing the hike. Barbecued up a few lamb chops. Apologies for anybody watching this who's vegan, but I'm not. Yeah, really, really great hike. Great little camp spot. And it was good to sit there, listen to the crickets sing and, the crackling of the fire and the sunset over the Coromandel Forest Park. So if you're thinking about doing this, I'd really recommend doing it. No other question about it. And hope that you find it as an enjoyable experience as I did. Thank you very much. Alright, well that's all for now folks on the Pinnacles. This is my first YouTube video of this nature, so please be sure to forgive any corrections that may be necessary. But if you did enjoy this, then please like and subscribe for more content. It's my goal for this year to do a lot more hiking, and I'm going to be sure to share with you those experiences and hints and tips as to how to get the best experience for them. It's a truly beautiful country, and if I haven't said so already, be sure to come and see it for yourself. But thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.